I discovered my entire family was planning to dump me in state care when I found the brochures hidden in my own kitchen drawer. Not just any brochures. Glossy pamphlets for Riverside State Facility, the kind of place where they warehouse elderly people whose families have given up pretending to care. The kind of place with locked doors and medication schedules and visiting hours that make it clear you're not a resident, you're a prisoner. The brochures were tucked between my dish towels, underneath a stack of takeout menus I'd been collecting for years. Someone had been researching my disposal like they were shopping for a new refrigerator, comparing amenities and monthly costs and wait times for admission. Written in my daughter Carol's neat handwriting across the top of one brochure, waiting list, 3 months. Medicaid accepted. No private room availability. No private room availability. They weren't even planning to pay for basic dignity. I was standing in my own kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd cooked Thanksgiving dinner for 43 years, holding evidence that my children and grandchildren had decided I was too much trouble to keep around. The woman who'd raised 4 children through the Depression and World War II, who'd buried 2 husbands and a son, who'd helped raise 7 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren, was being researched like a problem to be solved. But here's what they'd forgotten in their careful planning. I was Dorothy Chin, and I'd been surviving family crises since before most of them were born. At 91, I might move slower than I used to, and I might need help opening pickle jars, but my mind was as sharp as the day I'd started my own business in 1962. Sharp enough to recognize betrayal when it was being planned in my own house. Sharp enough to know that when family starts discussing you in the third person while you're sitting right there, it's time to start planning your own survival strategy. They thought age had made me helpless. They were about to learn it had made me invisible. And invisible women, as I was about to prove, had their own kind of power. The official family meeting was scheduled for Sunday dinner, like always. Every first Sunday of the month for the past 15 years, my kitchen filled with the chaos of multiple generations, Carol and her husband Bob, my son James with his wife Linda, their children and their children's children, all gathering around the table I'd bought in 1958 and somehow never replaced. Usually, these dinners were celebrations. Updates on jobs and schools, announcements about pregnancies and graduations, the comfortable noise of a family that still chose to spend time together. This dinner felt different from the moment they walked through the door. Too many whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Too many concerned looks and careful questions about how I was managing and whether I was comfortable living alone. Too much discussion about my medications, my doctor visits, my grocery shopping, as if my daily life had suddenly become a matter of public concern. "Mom, we've been thinking," Carol said as I served the pot roast I'd been making every first Sunday for longer than she'd been married. "Maybe it's time to talk about some changes." "What kind of changes?" "Well, this house is getting to be a lot for you to maintain. And you're not getting any younger." I was 91 years old. I hadn't been getting younger for 9 decades. This wasn't news. "The house suits me fine," I said, settling into my chair at the head of the table. The same chair where I'd presided over thousands of family meals, where I'd helped with homework and settled arguments and dispensed the kind of wisdom that only comes from surviving almost a century of life. "But Mom," James chimed in, "what if something happens? What if you fall or have a medical emergency or—" "Then I'll deal with it. Same as I've been dealing with problems for 91 years. They exchanged those looks again. The looks that said they'd already discussed this, already decided what was best for me, and were now just going through the motions of pretending I had a choice. "We're not saying anything has to happen immediately," Linda said in the soothing tone people use with children and confused elderly people. "We're just saying maybe it's time to explore options. For your own safety and peace of mind." Options. Such a gentle word for what they were really discussing. My grandson Michael, Carol's oldest at 38, leaned forward with the earnest expression of someone who thought he was being helpful. "Grandma Dorothy, there are some really nice assisted living communities now. Much better than the old nursing homes. They have activities, social programs, medical staff on site. They have locked doors and visiting hours and strangers making decisions about when I can eat and sleep and bathe." "That's not," Carol started. "That's exactly what they have." I may be old, but I'm not stupid. The silence that followed was thick with discomfort. My great-granddaughter Emma, Michael's 15-year-old, was the only one who met my eyes. She looked embarrassed for all of them. "Nobody's saying you're stupid, Mom," Bob said carefully. "We're saying we're worried about you." "Worried about what, exactly?" "Well, you're living alone in this big house. I've been living alone for 12 years, since your father died. It hasn't been a problem yet. But you're getting older. I get older every day. So do you. Should we start researching facilities for you too?" Michael tried again. "Grandma, it's not about age. It's about safety. What if you fell down these stairs? What if you left the stove on? What if? What if a meteor hit the house? We could play what if all day, Michael. What matters is what's actually happening, not what might happen." I looked around the table at faces I'd known since they were babies. Emma was still the only one who looked uncomfortable with the conversation. Everyone else was nodding along, as if my theoretical helplessness was an established fact. "I think," I said slowly, "this conversation is over." "Mom," Carol started. I said it's over. "If you want to eat dinner, we'll talk about something else. If you want to continue planning my life without my input, you can do it somewhere else." They ate in subdued silence, making awkward small talk about weather and work while avoiding my eyes. After dessert, they left earlier than usual, with promises to continue the conversation later and suggestions that I think about what we've discussed. But I'd already been thinking. And what I was thinking was that they'd made a fundamental miscalculation. They assumed I was too old and frail to fight back. They thought I'd be grateful for their concern, compliant with their plans, ready to be managed like a problem that needed solving. They forgot that I'd survived the Depression by being resourceful, not grateful. I'd raised 4 children during World War II by being strategic, not compliant. I'd built a successful catering business in the 1960s by being smart, not manageable. Age hadn't changed any of that. If anything, it had made me better at all of it. After they left, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and the state facility brochures they'd hidden from me. I read every page, studied every amenity and restriction, calculated every cost. Then I did something they'd never expect from a helpless old woman. I started planning their defeat. The first thing I did was call my lawyer. Helen Morrison had been handling my legal affairs for 25 years, ever since my second husband died and left me with a complex estate to manage. She was in her 70s herself now, still sharp, still fierce, and completely unsentimental about family dynamics. "Dorothy, what can I do for you? I need to know what rights my family has regarding my living situation and medical decisions. Are they pressuring you about something? They want to put me in state care. Against my wishes. Do you have a power of attorney on file?" "Yes, with Carol as primary and James as backup." "When was it signed?" 5 years ago, when I had my heart surgery." "Dorothy, listen carefully. Power of attorney doesn't give them the right to make decisions you disagree with while you're mentally competent. It only activates if you're genuinely unable to make decisions for yourself. And if they claim I'm not mentally competent, then they need medical documentation and court approval for guardianship. It's not something they can just decide on their own." "What if they get medical documentation?" Helen was quiet for a moment. "Have you had any cognitive testing recently?" "Dr. Patterson runs basic assessments every year. Last one was 6 months ago. Everything normal. Then you're protected. But Dorothy, if you're concerned about this, we should take some precautions." "What kind of precautions?" "Update your power of attorney with more specific language about your preferences. Create advance directives that explicitly state your wishes about living arrangements. Maybe add a requirement for second medical opinions before any major decisions." "Can we revoke their power of attorney entirely?" "We can. But that might escalate the conflict. They might petition for emergency guardianship if they think you're being irrational." "So I'm trapped either way?" "Not trapped. Just careful. The goal is to protect your rights while not giving them ammunition to claim you're incompetent." I scheduled an appointment for the following week to update all my legal documents. But legal protection was just the first step. I needed to understand exactly what my family was planning and how far they were willing to go. So I did something I hadn't done since my children were teenagers. I started spying on them. Carol lived 15 minutes away and visited twice a week, ostensibly to check on me, but really, I now realized, to monitor my condition and report back to the family. Usually she came on Tuesdays and Fridays, always letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago. The Tuesday after our family dinner confrontation, I was ready for her. I'd positioned myself in the upstairs hallway where I could hear her movements, but remain unseen. Carol went straight to the kitchen, not to check on me but to go through my refrigerator, my mail, my medication bottles. Taking inventory. Then she made a phone call. "It's me," she said. "I'm at Mom's." "No, she's upstairs napping." The refrigerator situation is worse. Moldy leftovers, expired milk. Yes, I threw it away. She's definitely not managing basic self-care. I wasn't napping. I was listening to my daughter manufacture evidence of my incompetence. The milk wasn't expired. I'd checked the date that morning. The leftovers weren't moldy, I'd cooked them yesterday. But Carol was creating a narrative of decline, documenting problems that didn't exist to support conclusions she'd already reached. "James, we need to accelerate the timeline," she continued. "I found 3 bottles of the same prescription medication. Either she's double dosing or she's forgetting she already picked them up." "No, I didn't ask her about it." "What's the point? She'll just get defensive." 3 bottles of medication. I'd picked up my refill early because I was going out of town next month, something I'd mentioned to Carol twice. But she was interpreting ordinary planning as evidence of confusion. The house is getting dangerous too. There are throw rugs everywhere, stairs with no railings, a kitchen that's basically a fire hazard waiting to happen. The throw rugs had been in the same places for 20 years. The stairs had never had railings because they'd never needed them. The kitchen was the same kitchen where I'd cooked safely for 6 decades. But Carol was building a case, turning normal household features into hazards, routine planning into incompetence, ordinary aging into evidence of incapacity. "I think we need to have her evaluated," she concluded. "Not by Dr. Patterson, he's too familiar with her. Someone independent who can give us an objective assessment." "Yes, I know she'll resist." "That's exactly why we need documentation." After she hung up, Carol spent another 20 minutes going through my papers, my bills, my personal items, looking for evidence to support the conclusion she'd already reached, that I needed to be managed, not consulted. When she finally called upstairs to check on me, I made sure to sound groggy and confused, as if I'd actually been napping. Let her think her surveillance was undetected. But after she left, I called Helen Morrison again. "They're building a case," I told her. "Manufacturing evidence of incompetence to justify forced placement." "Dorothy, this is serious. If they're documenting alleged incidents of confusion or unsafe behavior, they might have grounds for an emergency guardianship petition. Even if the evidence is fabricated, courts rely on family members to report accurately. If multiple relatives claim you're declining, and if they can find a doctor who agrees, you could be removed from your home before you have a chance to contest it." So what do? Document everything. Record conversations if possible. Get your own medical evaluation from an independent source. And Dorothy, yes, maybe it's time to consider that your family isn't acting in your best interests. Maybe it's time to protect yourself from them instead of trying to reason with them. That night, I sat in my kitchen, the kitchen Carol had described as a fire hazard, and felt something harden in my chest. Not anger, exactly. Something colder and more purposeful. My family wasn't trying to protect me. They were trying to dispose of me. And they thought I was too old and confused to stop them. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I went shopping for surveillance equipment. Not the high-tech kind you see in movies, but the simple, legal kind available at any electronics store. A small digital recorder for conversations, a basic security camera for my kitchen, and a tablet computer so I could document everything electronically. The young man at the store was patient and helpful, showing me how to operate everything with the kind of exaggerated clarity people use with elderly customers. I let him think I was a confused grandmother trying to learn modern technology. It made him less likely to remember me or wonder why a 91-year-old woman needed recording equipment. That afternoon, I called my doctor. Dr. Patterson, this is Dorothy Chin. I need to schedule a comprehensive physical and cognitive evaluation. Is there a specific concern, Dorothy? My family seems to think I'm declining mentally. I'd like documentation that I'm not. When was your last cognitive assessment? 6 months ago. Everything was normal. But I'd like something more comprehensive. Something that would stand up in court if necessary. Dr. Patterson was quiet for a moment. Dorothy, are you concerned about your family trying to have you declared incompetent? I'm concerned about protecting my rights while I'm still capable of protecting them. I understand. Let me refer you to Dr. Sarah Kim at the Geriatric Psychiatry Clinic. She specializes in capacity evaluations. Very thorough, very well regarded by the courts. How soon can I see her? Let me make some calls. By the end of the week, I had an appointment with Dr. Kim and a full surveillance setup in my house. Every conversation with family members would be recorded. Every visit would be documented. Every claim they made about my competence could be verified against objective evidence. But I also had another plan, one that would turn their own strategy against them. If they wanted documentation of incompetence, I'd give them documentation of competence instead. I started with my daily routine. Instead of just living my life, I began documenting it. Photographing healthy meals I prepared, receipting bills I paid on time, recording medication schedules I followed correctly. Creating a trail of evidence that showed not decline, but consistent, competent self-management. I also started reaching out to people who'd known me for years. My neighbor Margaret, who'd lived next door for 35 years. My hairdresser Betty, who'd been doing my hair every Friday for 2 decades. My pharmacist Tom, who could verify that I managed my medications responsibly. Building a network of witnesses who could testify to my continued competence and independence. But the most important call I made was to Emma. My great-granddaughter was 15, old enough to understand family dynamics, but young enough to still have a conscience about them. She was also the only family member who'd looked uncomfortable during our Sunday dinner confrontation. Grandma Dorothy? Is everything okay? Emma, sweetheart, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you think I'm losing my mind? What? No. Why would you ask that? Because your parents and grandparents seem to think I am. They're discussing putting me in a nursing home. They're what? Grandma Dorothy, that's crazy. You're fine. I mean, you're old, but you're not. You're not confused or anything. Have you heard them discussing this? There was a long pause. Mom and Dad have been talking about how worried they're about you. About you living alone and getting older and stuff. But they never said anything about a nursing home. Emma, if they did decide to put me somewhere I didn't want to be, would you help me? Help you how? Be a witness. Tell the truth about what you've observed. Support my right to make my own decisions about my life. Of course I would. Grandma Dorothy, you're the strongest person I know. If you say you're fine, then you're fine. Even if it meant going against your parents and grandparents? Another pause, longer this time. Even then. Thank you, sweetheart. That means more to me than you know. After I hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this nightmare began. Hope. Not hope that my family would come to their senses. I'd already accepted they wouldn't. Hope that I could protect myself from them, that I could fight back, that I could maintain my dignity and independence despite their efforts to take both away. At 91 years old, I was preparing for the most important battle of my life. A battle against my own children and grandchildren who decided I was too inconvenient to love and too valuable to ignore. They thought age had made me weak and helpless. They were about to discover it had made me strategic and ruthless. The comprehensive evaluation with Dr. Kim took 3 hours and covered everything from memory and reasoning to spatial awareness and problem solving. The results were unambiguous. Mrs. Chin demonstrates cognitive function consistent with normal aging. She shows no signs of dementia, significant cognitive decline, or impairment that would affect her ability to make informed decisions about her care and living arrangements. Dr. Kim was thorough and blunt. Your family's concerns appear to be unfounded based on objective testing. You are fully competent to make your own medical and legal decisions. What if they claim otherwise? Then they need their own medical evidence to support those claims. And frankly, any doctor who evaluated you honestly would reach the same conclusion I did. I had the report notarized and copied, storing originals with Helen Morrison and keeping copies in multiple secure locations. Legal armor against whatever my family was planning. But I didn't have to wait long to find out what that was. The intervention was scheduled for the following Sunday, though they didn't call it that. Carol invited me for Sunday dinner at my house for a change, with the whole family present. I knew it was an ambush the moment I walked into her living room and saw Dr. Mitchell Brennan sitting with my family like he belonged there. Dr. Brennan was a geriatrician I'd never met, never consulted, never even heard of until that moment. But he was sitting in Carol's living room with a briefcase and a serious expression, clearly prepared to make assessments about my mental state based on a single meeting. "Mom," Carol said, her voice artificially bright, "this is Dr. Brennan. We asked him to come speak with you about some health concerns we've been having." "What health concerns?" "Well, we've noticed some changes lately. Memory issues, confusion about medications, problems managing the house." All lies. All carefully constructed fiction designed to justify what they'd already decided to do. "I haven't had any memory issues," I said calmly. "Mom, last week you couldn't remember what day it was when I called." "Last week when you called?" "I was in the shower. I was confused about why you were calling, not what day it was." Dr. Brennan leaned forward with professional concern. "Mrs. Chin, your family has described several incidents that suggest you might be having some difficulties with daily living activities. Such as," he consulted a notepad, "expired food in your refrigerator, multiple prescriptions suggesting confusion about medication management, unsafe conditions in your home." The food wasn't expired, the prescriptions were early refills for travel, and my home has been the same for 60 years without being unsafe. "Sometimes people experiencing cognitive decline aren't aware of the changes," he said gently. "And sometimes families experiencing inheritance anxiety aren't aware of their own motivations." The room went dead silent. "Mrs. Chin," Dr. Brennan continued, "I'd like to ask you some basic questions. What year is it?" 2024. "Who's the president?" "Joe Biden, though I didn't vote for him." "Can you tell me your address?" I recited my address, phone number, social security number, and the birth dates of everyone in the room, including Dr. Brennan's license number, which I'd looked up before coming. "Your family is concerned about your ability to live independently." "My family is concerned about the value of my house and the contents of my will." "There's a difference." "Mom," Carol protested. "Carol, you've been researching state facilities for 3 months. James has been calculating the value of my property. Michael has been asking about my investment accounts. Did you think I didn't notice?" Dr. Brennan looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Chin, are you refusing medical evaluation?" "I'm refusing uninformed medical evaluation. I've already been evaluated by Dr. Sarah Kim, a geriatric psychiatrist, who found me fully competent to make my own decisions." I pulled out Dr. Kim's report and handed it to him. "Comprehensive testing, conducted last week. You're welcome to review it." Dr. Brennan read the report, his expression growing increasingly troubled. This is completely contrary to what your family has described." "Yes, it is. Mrs. Chin, if you're competent to make your own decisions, and if this evaluation is accurate, then there's no medical basis for the interventions your family is requesting." "What interventions were they requesting?" He looked around the room at my family's stricken faces. "Emergency guardianship and immediate placement in supervised care." Emergency guardianship. They'd been planning to have me declared incompetent and removed from my home, possibly that very day. Based on what evidence? Based on their reports of declining function and unsafe living conditions. Reports that were fabricated, as you can now see. Dr. Brennan closed his briefcase and stood up. "Mrs. Chin, I apologize for this situation. Your family seems to have misrepresented the circumstances. You are clearly competent to make your own decisions." After he left, the room erupted. "Mom, you don't understand," Carol started. "I understand perfectly. You've been lying about my mental state to justify putting me in state care so you can access my assets without the inconvenience of my input. That's exactly what this is." And Dr. Brennan just confirmed it. James found his voice. "Mom, We're worried about you. This house is too much. This house is mine. My worry is mine to carry. My life is mine to live. But what happens when you really do need help? Then I'll ask for it. From people who care about my well-being, not my net worth. We care about your well-being. You care about your inheritance. There's a difference, and we all know it. The silence that followed was profound and final. Within a week, I'd changed all my locks, updated my will, and revoked the power of attorney I'd given Carol and James. Helen Morrison handled everything with professional efficiency and personal satisfaction. Dorothy, I've seen a lot of family conflicts over the years. What your children attempted was elder abuse, pure and simple. What are my options now? You have several. You could file criminal charges for attempted fraud and conspiracy. You could sue for emotional distress. Or you could simply protect yourself and move on. What do you recommend? Honestly, I recommend you enjoy your independence and let them live with the consequences of their choices. That's exactly what I did. The family dinners stopped. The concerned phone calls stopped. The surprise visits stopped. At first, their absence felt like punishment. Eventually, it felt like freedom. I hired a housekeeper to come twice a week, not because I needed the help but because it provided witnesses to my competent daily functioning. I arranged for grocery delivery, not because I couldn't shop but because it was convenient. I signed up for medical alert services, not because I was afraid but because it was prudent. All the precautions my family claimed to want me to take, I took on my own terms, in my own time, with my own choices. Emma visited regularly, often bringing friends who were fascinated by her great-grandmother who'd fought off her entire family. She helped me set up social media accounts so I could stay connected with old friends and make new ones. She taught me video calling so I could maintain relationships without depending on family transportation. Most importantly, she witnessed my continued competence and independence, creating a record of my functioning that would protect me if my family ever tried again to have me declared incompetent. 6 months after the failed intervention, Carol called. Mom, I think we need to talk. About what? About family. About forgiveness. About moving forward. I've already moved forward, Carol. The question is whether you have. I know we made mistakes. You didn't make mistakes. You made choices. You chose to lie about my mental state, fabricate evidence of incompetence, and attempt to have me declared unfit to make my own decisions. Those weren't mistakes. They were calculated actions designed to benefit yourselves at my expense. We were trying to help. You were trying to help yourselves. And the fact that you can't acknowledge that even now tells me nothing has changed. Mom, please. You're our family. Family doesn't try to steal each other's autonomy, Carol. Family doesn't lie about each other's competence to access their assets. Family doesn't conspire to warehouse elderly relatives in state facilities against their will. What do you want from us? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. Even when you're family. Especially when you're family. Does that mean you'll never forgive us? It means I'll never trust you again. And without trust, there's no foundation for family relationships. That was the last conversation I had with any of them except Emma. 2 years later, I'm still in my house, still managing my own affairs, still proving every day that age doesn't equal incompetence. I'm 93 now, and yes, I move slower than I used to. I need help with some physical tasks, and I'm more careful about stairs and weather and driving at night. But my mind is sharp, my decisions are my own, and my life is exactly what I choose it to be. The house is worth more now than when my family was planning to liquidate it. My investments have grown under management I chose myself. My health is stable under care I direct personally. Most importantly, my dignity is intact. Emma graduated high school and chose a college close enough to visit regularly. She's studying social work, inspired, she says, by watching me fight the system and win. She brings friends over for dinner, and they listen to my stories about the Depression and the war and building a business when women weren't supposed to know about money. They see me as a survivor, a fighter, a woman who refused to be disappeared by her own family. They don't see me as a burden or a problem or an inconvenience. They see me as I am, a person with agency, dignity, and the right to make my own choices about my own life. Last month, Margaret next door asked me what I thought would have happened if I'd just gone along with my family's plans. I'd be in state care right now, I said. Medicated into compliance, visited occasionally out of obligation. Forgotten except when my death became convenient for estate planning. Do you think they understand what they tried to do? I think they understand they failed. Whether they understand why they were wrong to try, that's a different question. Do you ever regret fighting back? I looked around my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd found those brochures 2 years ago. The same kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of family meals, where I'd raised children and celebrated grandchildren and survived the loss of 2 husbands. The kitchen that would have been emptied and cleaned and prepared for sale if I hadn't fought back. No, I said. I don't regret it at all. Because this is what I learned at 91. Family isn't defined by DNA or shared history. It's defined by respect, love, and the commitment to honor each other's dignity. My children and grandchildren failed that test. They chose convenience over compassion, inheritance over integrity, control over caring. But Emma passed with flying colors. So did Margaret and Betty and Tom and all the people who saw me as a person worth protecting rather than a problem to be managed. That's my real family now. The people who choose to love me as I am, not as they need me to be. I'm 93 years old, living independently in the house I've loved for 60 years, making my own decisions about my own life. I'm not a burden. I'm not a problem. I'm not an inconvenience. I'm Dorothy Chin, and I'm exactly where I choose to be. If my children want to be part of that life, they know where to find me. But they'll find me on my terms, or not at all. Some things are worth fighting for, even at 93. Especially at 93.